There's a kind of person who never raises their voice, never breaks a rule, and yet they leave you feeling hollow, disoriented, even unsafe. They smile kindly, they say the right things, they seem perfect, but your instincts whisper, run. You've met them, that colleague who seems so composed, so controlled, that their presence makes your skin crawl even though they've never said an unkind word. The friend who's always fine, but something in their eyes feels vacant, like you're looking through a window into an empty house. The partner who never loses control, never shows cracks, never seems quite there, even when they're sitting right next to you. There's something about their perfection that feels wrong, something about their composure that makes you question your own sanity, something about their kindness that leaves you feeling colder than before you met them. This isn't about villains, those we can see coming. It's about masks and the people who've forgotten they're wearing them. And today we reveal what makes some of the kindest faces the most dangerous, not because they want to hurt you, but because they've lost the ability to truly see you. We've all met them. The coworker who seems so composed that you question your own messy humanity around them. Their desk is perfect, their responses measured, their emotions contained. But somehow, being around them makes you feel like you're too much, too loud, too human. The partner who never loses control. And somehow that makes you feel more out of control. They never fight, never cry, never seem to need anything. And instead of feeling grateful, you find yourself longing for something real, something raw, something that proves there's a person underneath all that perfection. The friend who's always fine. But you walk away from every conversation feeling strangely drained, like you've been talking to a mirror that reflects back exactly what you want to see, but nothing more. But deep down, something feels missing. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. Carl Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear for the world. We all have one. We need one. It's how we navigate social situations, professional environments, family gatherings. It's the part of us that knows how to behave appropriately, say the right things, play the expected roles. But what happens when someone becomes so identified with their mask that they forget there's a person underneath? When the performance becomes so complete that even they believe it? When the role they play becomes more real to them than the soul they're hiding? This video isn't about psychopaths. Those are easy to spot once you know what to look for. They're dramatic, obvious, clearly dangerous. It's about people who have become their persona so completely that they've lost connection to their shadow, their depth, their soul, and therefore, to you. These are the people Jung warned us about. Not because they're evil, but because they're absent. They've become strangers to themselves. And when someone is absent from themselves, they become dangerous in ways that are almost impossible to see coming. They're dangerous because they can't love what they can't see. They can't accept in you what they've rejected in themselves. They can't hold space for your humanity because they've forgotten their own. The quietly dangerous archetype. These people are not loud. They're not abusive in the traditional sense. They don't dominate or demand or throw tantrums, but their energy disorients you in ways you can't quite name. In each of us there is another, whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams. Carl Jung, that other is the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or simply never acknowledged. The angry parts, the selfish parts, the scared parts, the needy parts, the parts that don't fit our ideal image of who we should be. And when we bury the shadow too long, when we stuff it down, lock it away, Pretend it doesn't exist. It doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It leaks into our relationships, into the masks we wear, into the way we move through the world. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah was the kind of manager everyone respected. Never raised her voice. Always professional. Always had the right response. Her office was immaculate. Her emails perfectly worded. Her presentations flawless. She wore tailored suits and spoke in measured tones and never, ever let her guard down. For 3 years, she was the star of her department. Her reviews were glowing. Her team's productivity was high. On paper, everything looked perfect. But her team started having panic attacks. Not because she was cruel, she wasn't. She was never anything but kind. She remembered birthdays. She said please and thank you. She never lost her temper or made unreasonable demands, but there was something about being around her that made people feel watched, judged, like they were failing some test they didn't know they were taking. Like no matter how well they performed, it would never be enough, because they could never be as perfect, as controlled, as utterly without flaw as she appeared to be. Sarah had become so identified with being the perfect professional that she'd lost touch with her own humanity. She'd buried her fears so deep that she couldn't empathize with others' fears. She'd controlled her emotions so completely that others' emotions felt like personal failures. And when you lose touch with your own messiness, your own flaws, your own shadow, you become incapable of connecting with others' humanity either. You become a standard that no one can meet, including yourself. The tragedy is that Sarah wasn't performing perfection to hurt anyone. She was performing it because she was terrified of being seen as anything less. But that terror, that need to be perfect, created exactly the kind of environment where no one else felt safe to be human. 5 signs. You're facing one. First, you feel anxious after seeing them, but don't know why. Your nervous system reacts to something your mind can't quite name. It's like talking to someone behind glass. They're there, but not really there. Your body picks up on the disconnection, even when your mind can't identify it. You walk away feeling unsettled, questioning yourself, wondering what you did wrong, even though nothing obvious happened. Second, they never express real emotion, only curated. Responses, everything feels rehearsed, like they're reading from a script written long ago. Even their spontaneity seems planned. Their laughter sounds hollow. Their concern feels performative. Their joy seems measured. There's no texture to their reactions, no unpredictability that makes us feel we're with another living, breathing, feeling human being. Third, their energy feels clean, but cold, like a hospital room, sterile, perfect, and somehow lifeless. You find yourself trying to bring warmth to the interaction, but it never seems to stick. It's like throwing logs on a fire that never quite catches. They smile, but the smile doesn't reach their eyes. They nod at the right moments, but something essential is missing. Fourth, you question your own instincts around them. They're so composed that your own emotions start to feel excessive, inappropriate, too much. You begin to doubt your own reality. Are you being too sensitive, too emotional, too human? Their perfection makes you feel fundamentally flawed, like there's something wrong with you for having feelings, needs, struggles that you can't simply control away. Fifth, they always seem morally right, but never vulnerable. They have opinions about everything, standards for everything, judgments about everything, but they never reveal the struggles, doubts, or fears that make someone relatable. They speak about life as if they've figured it all out, as if they've never made mistakes or felt lost or struggled with the same human challenges we all face. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. This is what Jung understood. The very qualities that make someone seem safe on the surface, their composure, their control, their apparent moral superiority, can be the exact qualities that make them dangerous to your psychological well-being. What if that person is you? Pause. Let this land. Let the question sit in the silence. You've smiled when you felt empty inside, haven't you? You've become the one who never complains, never needs anything, never shows weakness. You've learned to function perfectly while being completely disconnected from feeling. You've mastered the art of saying, "I'm fine," when you're falling apart inside. You've become the reliable one, the strong one, the one everyone can count on. You've learned to solve everyone else's problems while never admitting you have any of your own. Here's what Jung understood that most of us miss. Perfection is not presence. Order is not wholeness. Control is not connection. Let me share another story. Marcus came to therapy because his wife was leaving him after 15 years of marriage. "I don't understand," he said, his voice calm even in crisis. "I never yell at her. I provide for the family. I do everything right. I'm faithful, responsible, successful. I've given her everything she could want." And he had. He was kind, patient, responsible, successful. He remembered anniversaries, fixed things around the house, never forgot to take out the trash. He was, by every external measure, a perfect husband. But when his wife tried to explain why she was leaving, she said something that shattered his carefully constructed world. "It's like being married to a ghost. You're there, but you're not there. I've been lonely for years, even when we're in the same room. I don't know who you are underneath all that perfection." Marcus had spent so long performing the role of good husband that he'd forgotten how to simply be with her, with himself. He'd buried his needs so deep he couldn't access them. He'd controlled his fears so completely that he couldn't share them. He'd managed his desires so thoroughly that he'd forgotten what he actually wanted, beyond being seen as good, right, admirable. The mask had become the man. And no one can love a mask. No matter how beautiful it is, ask yourself this week, what emotion am I most afraid of others seeing in me? Anger, sadness, fear, need, jealousy, that emotion. That's where your shadow is hiding. That's where your healing begins. That's where your humanity lives, waiting to be reclaimed. Take a moment. Breathe deeply. What's coming up for you right now? Maybe your chest feels tight. Maybe you're remembering someone. Maybe you're recognizing yourself. Sometimes the most important conversations are the ones that make us uncomfortable. Stay with this feeling. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to heal you. The danger isn't that these people are evil. The danger is that they've become strangers to themselves. And when you don't know yourself, when you've rejected huge parts of your own humanity, you can't truly know anyone else. Jung called this unconscious projection, when we refuse to see our own darkness, our own messiness, our own shadow. We start projecting those qualities onto others. We become judges without realizing we're judging. We become perfect while making others feel fundamentally flawed. This is why your nervous system reacts around them. Some deep part of you recognizes that you're not interacting with a full human being. You're interacting with a carefully constructed image. And images, no matter how beautiful, can't love you back. They can't see you, can't hold space for your imperfections, can't meet you in your humanity because they've abandoned their own. The person who has rejected their own anger can't handle yours. The person who has denied their own sadness can't comfort yours. The person who has buried their own need can't see yours. The person who has controlled their own fear can't understand yours. They become psychological islands, beautiful to look at from a distance, but impossible to reach, impossible to truly connect with. This isn't about blame, it's about realization. It's about understanding why some of the most well-intentioned people can be the most psychologically damaging. I would rather be whole than good. Carl Jung, this quote is revolutionary because it challenges everything we've been taught about human goodness. We've been taught that good people don't have dark thoughts, don't feel anger, don't struggle with selfishness or envy or petty jealousies. We've been taught that the goal is to eliminate these parts of ourselves, to rise above them, to become morally pure. But Jung understood something profound. People who lose contact with their inner world, their desires, fears, shadows, contradictions, can't connect with others. They become sterile, polished, and subtly destructive. Not because they want to harm anyone, but because they've lost the capacity for real intimacy, real presence, real love. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Jung said, but that's what healing requires, not a new performance, not another mask, not a better version of the persona, but the courage to reclaim the parts you abandoned to be accepted, loved, admired. Here's what Jung discovered in his decades of clinical work. The people who seem most dangerous, the ones who trigger our deepest unease, are often the ones who have made a Faustian bargain. They've traded their souls for safety, their authenticity for approval, their wholeness for the illusion of goodness. They walk through life like actors who've forgotten their acting. The role has consumed the person, the mask has become the face. The performance has become the identity, and this creates a particular kind of violence, not physical, but psychological. It's subtle, almost invisible, but devastating in its impact. It's the violence of making others feel crazy for having emotions when you've learned to suppress yours completely. It's the violence of perfect composure in the face of someone else's pain because you can't access your own. It's the violence of being so disconnected from your own humanity that you can't recognize or honor the humanity in others. Think about it deeply. When someone is performing perfection around you, what does that do to your own imperfections? When someone never admits struggle, what does that do to your struggles? When someone has no visible cracks, what does that do to your cracks? It makes you feel fundamentally flawed, fundamentally too much, fundamentally wrong for being human. This is the quiet cruelty Jung warned about. Not the cruelty of intention, but the cruelty of absence, the cruelty of someone being so disconnected from their own depth that they become incapable of witnessing yours. They don't see your pain because they can't see their own. They don't understand your struggles because they've buried theirs so deep they've forgotten they exist. They don't know how to comfort you because they've never learned to comfort themselves, and perhaps most tragically, they often genuinely believe they're helping. They think their perfection is inspiring. They think their control is stabilizing. They think their composure is calming. But it's not. It's isolating. It's crazy-making. It's soul-crushing. Each day this week, admit one imperfection out loud, to a friend, to your partner, to yourself in the mirror. I felt jealous today. I was afraid. I made a mistake. I don't have it all figured out. Notice how it feels to let your humanness show. Notice who moves closer when you're real and who moves away. The people who move away were never truly available. For a relationship anyway. But here's what Jung knew that changes everything. This isn't permanent. This isn't a life sentence. The soul doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. And no matter how deeply buried, it's still there, waiting. These parts of you that you've rejected are not gone. They're in exile, waiting for you to remember that they're part of you too. The angry part, the scared part, the needy part, the imperfect part. They're all still there, holding essential pieces of your humanity. The question is not whether you can change. The question is, are you ready to dig? Are you ready to excavate the parts of yourself you buried to be loved? Are you ready to risk being seen as imperfect in order to finally be real? What happens when you stop playing a role? What happens when you let the mask slip? What happens when you choose wholeness over goodness? At first, fear. Bone deep, primal fear. Then, slowly, gradually, freedom. You'll stutter when you speak, because you're no longer reading from a script you memorized decades ago. You'll feel awkward when you cry, because you've forgotten how to let yourself feel without judgment. You'll lose people who liked your mask, and find those who love your truth. Let me tell you what happened to Sarah, the perfect manager I mentioned earlier. Her wake-up call came on a Tuesday afternoon when her teenage daughter said something that cracked her carefully constructed, world wide open. "Mom, I don't think I actually know you. Like, at all. I know the mom you perform, but I don't know you." That sentence hit Sarah like a physical blow. She sat in her car after the conversation, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry. Really cry. Not the careful, controlled tears she'd allowed herself during sad movies, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that came from a place she'd forgotten existed. The next day at work, something had shifted. When her team came to her with a problem, instead of her usual perfectly composed response, she heard herself say, "Honestly, I don't know what to do about this. I'm feeling overwhelmed too." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah was sure she'd just destroyed her career, her reputation, everything she'd worked so hard to build. But then something miraculous happened. Her team didn't lose respect for her. They didn't see her as weak or incompetent. Instead, for the first time in 3 years, they saw her as human. Over the following weeks, Sarah began to share more of herself. She admitted when she made mistakes instead of covering them up with elaborate explanations. She let her voice shake when she was nervous during presentations. She said, "I don't know," when she didn't know, instead of pretending she had all the answers. And slowly, the panic attacks stopped. Her team started coming to her with problems instead of hiding them. They began to trust her because, finally, she was someone who could be trusted. Someone real enough to understand their reality, flawed enough to relate to their struggles, human enough to connect with their humanity. The healing wasn't pretty. Sarah had to feel all the emotions she'd been storing up for years, the anger at herself for all the years she'd spent hiding, the sadness for all the connections she'd missed, the fear that maybe she was fundamentally unlovable without the mask, the overwhelming grief for the parts of herself she'd abandoned in childhood. It was messy and uncomfortable, and sometimes embarrassing. There were days when she wanted to go back to the safety of perfection, back to the control of the persona. But for the first time in decades, she felt alive. Really, truly alive. Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Jung, this is the paradox Jung understood. The very things we hide to be lovable are often the things that make us lovable. Our struggles make us relatable. Our fears make us human. Our imperfections make us approachable. Our wounds, when healed, become the source of our compassion. When you stop projecting your pain onto others, you stop attracting people who project theirs onto you. When you stop performing perfection, you stop demanding it from others. When you reclaim your shadow, you reclaim your light. When you integrate your wholeness, you become capable of real love. Write a letter to the part of yourself you've been hiding. The angry part, the scared part, the needy part. What would you say to that rejected piece of your soul? What would you apologize for? What would you promise? What would you thank them for protecting? You don't have to send it. Just write it. Let them know they're welcome home. The journey back to yourself isn't linear. There will be days when you retreat back into the safety of the mask. Days when being real feels too vulnerable, too dangerous, too much. But slowly, gradually, you'll discover something revolutionary. You as you are. Not as you think you should be. Not as others want you to be, but as you actually are. Flawed, struggling, imperfect, and absolutely worthy of love. You know, what's interesting? The people watching this video who need to hear this message most are probably the ones feeling most uncomfortable right now. That discomfort, that resistance, that's your soul knocking. That's the part of you that's been in exile. Asking to come home. Don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Listen to what it's trying to tell you. The journey back to yourself isn't about becoming different. It's about remembering who you were before you learned to be afraid of yourself. Before you learned that your emotions were too much for others to handle. Before you learned that your needs were inconvenient, burdensome, selfish. Before you learned that your authentic self wasn't acceptable, wasn't lovable, wasn't enough. That person, the real you, never left. They just went into hiding. They've been waiting patiently, sometimes for decades, for you to remember that they exist. For you to remember that they're not the enemy of your happiness. They are your happiness. They're the part of you that feels deeply, loves fiercely, dreams wildly. They're the part of you that gets excited about simple things, that cries at movies, that laughs until your stomach hurts. They're the part of you that needs connection, that craves authenticity, that knows the difference between being loved for who you pretend to be and being loved for who you actually are. So here's the darkest truth about the most dangerous kind of people. They are not evil. They are not monsters. They are not trying to hurt anyone. They are disconnected from themselves and therefore from everyone else. And when you lose yourself, when you reject your own humanity in pursuit of an impossible ideal, you lose the ability to love others properly. You can't give what you don't have. You can't see what you refuse to look at. You can't love someone else's humanity when you've rejected your own. You can't hold space for others' imperfections when you can't tolerate your own. This is why the most dangerous people are often the ones who appear the most virtuous. Their very goodness has become a prison for themselves and for everyone around them. But here's the hopeful truth. The truth that Jung spent his entire life proving. You can come home, not by becoming better, but by becoming real. Not by fixing yourself, but by accepting yourself. Not by hiding your darkness, but by making friends with it. Not by eliminating your shadow, but by integrating it. Jung spent his life studying this path of integration, and what he found was revolutionary. Wholeness is not about eliminating the shadow. It's about embracing it. It's about saying, yes, I have the capacity for anger, for selfishness, for pettiness, for fear. And I also have the capacity for love, for generosity, for courage, for joy. Both are true. Both are human. Both are you. The integrated person, the person who has done this difficult, lifelong work of shadow integration, is unmistakable when you meet them. They don't need to prove anything to you. They don't need to be right all the time. They don't need your approval to feel worthy. They don't need to be perfect to feel lovable. But somehow, mysteriously, in their presence, you feel permission to be yourself, to be flawed, struggling, imperfect, and still worthy of love, because they've given that permission to themselves first. They've learned the secret that Jung tried to teach us all. The goal is not to be good. The goal is to be whole. This is Jung's greatest gift to humanity. The understanding that we don't have to choose between being good and being real. We can be both, but only if we're willing to face the parts of ourselves we've been taught to hide. Only if we're willing to admit that we are complex, contradictory beings capable of both light and shadow. Only if we're willing to stop performing perfection and start practicing presence. Only if we're willing to risk being seen as human in order to finally be free. Every night this week, before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what part of me did I hide today? What part of me was I afraid to show? And then, with infinite compassion, ask, what would happen if I let that part be seen tomorrow? What would happen if I stopped pretending to be perfect and started being real? The answers might surprise you. They might terrify you. They might free you. The most dangerous person is not the one who has darkness, but the one who refuses to see it. The safest person. The person you can trust with your heart, your struggles, your imperfections, is not the one without shadows, but the one who has learned to dance with them. And when you live too long in a role, when you perform a persona for so many years that you forget it's a performance, you forget where your soul is. But here's what Jung knew, what he proved through decades of work with thousands of patients. Your soul remembers where you are. It's been waiting for you to come home. It's been holding space for your return. It's been loving you through every moment of forgetting, every year of exile, every performance of perfection. It knows you're tired of the mask. It knows you're ready to be real. It knows you're ready to be whole. If this video stirred something in you, if you've worn that mask for too long, if you recognize yourself in these patterns, or if someone in your life fits this description, leave a comment below. Let us know which part stayed with you. Share what came up for you during this journey. Tell us about a time when you chose authenticity over perfection, and if you're ready to stop being perfect and start being whole, subscribe and walk this path with us. Because the journey to wholeness is not one we have to take alone. It's not meant to be taken alone. Your imperfections are not bugs in your programming. They're features of your humanity. Your struggles are not failures to overcome. They're doorways to compassion. Your shadow's not your enemy. It's your teacher, waiting to show you how to be real. The world doesn't need another perfect person. It has enough of those already, and they're slowly dying inside their beautiful prisons. The world needs you. Real, flawed, struggling, imperfect, gloriously human you. Until next time, welcome home, my friend.